by random mutation, and then there is the process of natural selection, or which I sort of rename in the book, natural breeding, that operates on the variation and produces changes in the stock or the population. Now, one of the interesting things when I was doing the research for this was to be able to tell this basic Darwinian narrative in terms drawn directly from the Bible, because this metaphor of random variation and or randomness in the generation of variation and of change in the stock through breeding must go back to the dawn of agriculture. And so therefore these very concepts are found within the Bible. And in particular in Genesis, there's an extended treatment about the farmer Jacob, who was a man of God, and his interaction with his master Laban. To make a long story short, Laban had been beating up on Jacob over the years, and God said to Jacob, well, first of all, so Jacob and Laban struck a deal that Jacob could keep the cattle and sheep and so forth that were speckled and brown, and the other cattle and sheep would revert to Laban's ownership. And God spoke to to Jacob, and said that I will recompense you for the injustices you've found. And so, according to Genesis, God caused the rams, or the males of the speckled and brown cattle and sheep, to, quote, leap upon, unquote, the females and do most of the breeding. And as a result, the stock gradually changed through time to come to be consist of the type of individuals that Jacob owned. So in this way, the hand of God directly drove, if you will, the course of evolution in this species. Now, and you could just lift this passage and plug it directly into an evolution book if you wanted. Now, the issue of randomness is also a real red flag in a lot of these circles. And there's a parable that many of you may know about the mustard seed. And this is from the New Testament. And it has to do with Jesus discussing his concept of teaching, his notion of teaching. And he draws an analogy to a farmer who's going along, and as seeds drop off the end of the cart, the seeds land on shallow soil and on good soil and so forth. And those that land on shallow soil don't grow. Those that land on good soil grow and produce fruit 100 times over in 100-fold. And similarly, he describes his own teaching as though they were mustard seeds, that the teachings go out to the multitude, and those who are capable of hearing hear them. Those who don't hear don't listen, don't hear. But those who do hear then go forth and bear fruit. And this is basically the notion of randomness, that is throwing the ideas out to the multitude and just seeing where they hear, where the messages are heard. So I even used the phrase in the book that a mutation is a mustard seed of DNA tossed into bodies at random, and then you see in what bodies those mustard seeds of DNA prosper, and in those bodies then fruit is produced 100-fold. And so in this way one can directly find passages within the Bible that can lead to an inherently friendly narrative about what evolution is. And that was a very sort of exciting thing to do, because you can then actually begin a discourse without the supposition that you're automatically going to start a fight. Now, the rest of the book goes into it has a chapter on intelligent design, and above all, my religious, if you will, or theological criticisms of intelligent design. It goes into a lot of other issues It's but rather than what I'd like to do now is to mention some issues that specifically came up this morning, and I guess what my sense is that the discussion this morning was dealing with caricatures of both scientists and of people of faith, and I think that one issue involves the claim that scientists have heroes and not prophets. And I don't think that's obvious in the least. And I think that the status of Darwin in evolutionary biology at the moment is that of a prophet and not of a hero. And I think that anyone who seriously finds fault with an element of Darwin's writings that's not some sort of trivial fact is inviting suicide that only tenure can protect you from. So I just simply doubt the truth of the claim that scientists have heroes and not prophets. Secondly, there's an issue of whether science is correct. You see, if we're going to work with people who at the moment are anti-evolution or anti-science, and if you see these people saying, well, I believe the Bible, I don't believe scientists, are they idiots, as is in effect implied by the previous discussion? Now, on the other hand, is the science correct? I mean, what do we have to go by? Not a little while ago, estrogen was being recommended for breast cancer. Now it's a no-no. In point after point, you just never really know, if you're in the general public, what scientific assertion is correct. That's a big problem. You can say, okay, it'd be great if everybody were scientifically literate, but they have to be more than scientifically literate. They actually have to make a decision as to what elements of science at any one time are correct. And some are frequently not tested. Now, from that perspective, if you don't really know whether the science is right or not, then the credibility of the Bible rises in comparison, because the Bible has, after all, been around for a couple thousand years. And so it's not as clear-cut as this morning's discussion seemed to suggest, that obviously you should side with science and not with the Bible. Because if you don't know if the science is true, then what do you do? So it's not irrational for someone to relatively emphasize the status of the Bible. Now, another issue that comes up is the endorsement, if you will, of the rationalist model, that science is rational, and as a product of the Enlightenment is something that we should endorse. That's great, rationalism. Now, as you must know, this is a dubious point. Is rational thought all that accurate, all that correct? And what about our emotions? What's the status of our emotions? For example, in the book, I said that actually to be a person of faith is to dignify the emotional. Do we actually require a rational argument for God? And is it a mistake to do that? How many people actually are people of faith and got to that position because of a rational argument? Almost no one, I would submit. And if we look at animals, what we find among other vertebrates, fish, all sorts of things, is a lot of reliance on body English, if you will. That's why animals have colors. They talk to one another with their bodies. We talk to one another with our bodies. We communicate, at least, in our bodies. We react to one another with our bodies. Rationality, great, but that at the very least is superimposed upon capabilities that we have that are broader. So, and of course there's been a lot of feminist criticism of the rationalist model. You know, the use your mind to control your body.